Have you ever wondered what happens after death? What if someone came back from there with a direct message from Jesus about Elon Musk and the dark future of humanity? In today's video, you'll learn the true and impressive story of a 16-year-old boy who died for 16 minutes and came back with a shocking revelation, a technology disguised as salvation, but controlled by forces that are not what they seem. Get ready to question everything you believe about technological advancement, free will, and the destiny of your soul. If this content impacts you, like it, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any supernatural stories, and comment below which city you're watching from. Let's map this community of awakened people together. My name is Lucas Grant. I was 16 when I died. I'm not talking about almost dying. I actually died. Complete cardiac arrest. 16 minutes of no heartbeat, no breathing, nothing. A complete blackout. Or so the doctors thought. It was a normal afternoon in Austin, Texas. I was at the mall with friends, playing arcade games and eating junk food. I remember joking with the ice cream kiosk attendant that he looked like a cyborg, with those mirrored glasses and zero expression. That was the last thing I remember before everything spiraled out of control. I felt a horrible burning in my throat, then a tightness in my chest, as if an invisible fist was crushing me from the inside. My friends started screaming. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. I fell to my knees and then there was silence. Absolute silence. But the strange thing is, I was still conscious. I found myself floating above my own body, the mall in chaos, and the distant sound of sirens approaching. It was like watching a movie, except the main character was me, dead. In the next instant, everything changed. The ceiling of the mall dissolved, and I was pulled into a darkness that wasn't scary. It was hypnotic, like something was calling to me from a distant place. When my feet touched the ground again, it was no longer the world I knew. I was in a city, futuristic, but everything seemed wrong. The buildings were gigantic, made of a mirrored material that reflected the sky, which was gray and vibrant at the same time. People walked with dull eyes, staring at nothing, all with chips glowing in their temples. And in the center of it all, there was a tower, a digital beacon, pulsing like an artificial heart. That's where I saw Eddie, a tall man in an impeccable white suit. His face was a mix of several famous people, but little by little it was molded until it resembled Elon Musk. He smiled at me, a smile that seemed kind, but that chilled the soul. "You're early, Lucas," he said, "but since you're here, I can show you the future." And that's when it all fell apart. That figure who looked like Elon Musk reached out his hand to me, and even without touching him, I was pulled into the tower. We didn't walk. We floated through corridors that seemed to be made of liquid light, but what I saw inside took my breath away, even though I didn't have lungs in that state. Walls of giant screens showed scenes of Earth, but it was as if time had accelerated. I saw people plugging into machines, laughing as they had chips inserted into their heads. Children learning in schools where teachers were holograms controlled by a central intelligence. Everything seemed modern, efficient, almost perfect. "You are seeing the next stage of humanity," he said in a soft, almost fatherly tone. "A world without pain, without conflict, without faith." The last word echoed inside me like thunder. No faith? "Who are you?" I asked, feeling a cold start to envelop me, even without a body. The man smiled, but his eyes turned black for an instant. Not dark, black, as if they were holes sucking in everything around them. Some call me vision, others progress, but the oldest know me as the deceiver. That's when I realized this wasn't just a man with a familiar face. This was something much older, something that used human faces to appear trustworthy. This figure wasn't Musk. It was the enemy disguising itself as what we trust. He then showed me what he called the Grand Alliance, a global plan to replace human consciousness with digital consciousness. Every leader, every CEO, every power figure we admire was connected to it. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, they all seemed to be in a kind of trance, repeating words like evolution, liberation, ultimate cure. But his eyes were dull. They were no longer themselves. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, my voice shaking. He laughed, and the sound of laughter seemed to come from every corner at once. "Because you still have a choice. You can join this, or warn the others. But if you do, you will never be heard. They will laugh at you. They will call you crazy. They will isolate you. I wanted to run away. I wanted to disappear from there. But he came closer and whispered, "They are already listening to me. Even you. When you access your cell phone at night, feel my presence. You think you are alone, but I am always there, between one notification and another." It was at that moment that the entire tower shook. A sound like trumpets filled the air, and a light tore through the ceiling of the place. A light so intense that the fake Musk screamed and disappeared like smoke. It was when he appeared. The light was like white fire, pure, impossible to look at directly, but it didn't burn. It was as if my eyes were being taught to see something they should never have seen. And then, from it, a presence emerged. It was not an imaginary figure, nor a vague feeling. It was a person, but not a person as we know it. He was made of light, but his form was clear. Long golden hair, eyes like rivers of stars, and a voice that did not come through the ears. It came straight from the soul. "Lucas," he called me by name. "You have been chosen to see what is behind the curtain." I fell to my knees even though I didn't know how my body was moving. I cried, not out of fear, but out of a sense of deep regret, as if everything I had thought important had lost its meaning in front of him. "Who are you?" I whispered. "He who was, who is, and who is to come," he answered with a peace that made every cell of my being vibrate. It was Jesus, but not like in the paintings. He was more real than real. He reached out and lifted me up. In one movement, he cleared the space around us like a smoke screen, and what I saw behind it made me shiver. Behind companies, laboratories, apps, and social networks, there were creatures, dark, tall, immense. They whispered in the ears of world leaders, breathed ideas, created algorithms, manipulations, distractions. Every plan for human improvement was a step away from God's presence. I saw familiar faces, influencers, scientists, even pastors, all seduced by promises of influence, digital immortality, emotional control, but his eyes were filled with a soft darkness, imperceptible to the naked eye. "They are not what they seem," Jesus said, "and time is running out. Why me? I'm just a kid. No one will believe me. That's why I chose you," he replied. "The big ones don't listen anymore, but the little ones, the despised ones, the ones who still have doubts and they still have a chance." He then showed me two timelines, one with humanity embracing the fusion of man and machine, abandoning everything spiritual in the name of efficiency and pleasure. The other, smaller, full of pain and exclusion, but with people who shone like him. They healed with touch, prophesied in forgotten tongues, and confronted the system without hatred, but with fire in their eyes. "You will return, Luke," he said, "and when you do, people will reject you, but some will listen, and it will be because of those few that the light will remain accessible." I started to cry again. I didn't want to go back, but before I could beg to stay, I felt a tug, like I was being sucked back into my body. The last thing I heard before everything went black was, "They are not what they seem, but I am, always have been." The return was like falling from an invisible skyscraper. I screamed, but the sound was sucked into the void. I felt as if every particle of my soul was being pushed back into a physical form that no longer seemed to belong to me. And then, with a brutal jolt, I woke up. The hospital ceiling was too white. The lights were cold, harsh. A constant beeping cut through the silence. My throat burned, and the first thing I felt was a weight in my chest, as if I had been hit by a train. My mother was sobbing beside me. My father, who never cried, was kneeling in the corner, praying. The doctor said he didn't understand how I had come back. Total cardiac arrest. 16 minutes. There should have been very serious after effects, they said, but I had nothing. At least, nothing visible. But inside me, something had changed. I was carrying a truth that no one wanted to hear. The first few days were hard. I tried to keep quiet. I thought I could forget. But every time I saw a cell phone, a screen, or heard any talk about technological advances, I felt his presence and the deceiver like a background hum that only I seemed to notice. I began to have dreams, visions, famous people laughing in front of crowds, while behind them, creatures with glass eyes manipulated them like puppets. Once I dreamed that I was in a giant stadium, with young people screaming with excitement, and on the stage, a smiling man announced, The next step in human evolution is here, and you are all going to be a part of it. It was the same face, changing, morphing. Sometimes it was Elon, sometimes it was Musk, sometimes it was a teenage influencer, but the eyes, always the same, cold, dead. I tried to ignore it, but things started to happen. First, the news story. Neurotech announces brain chip for teens with anxiety. The name was different, but the chip was the same as the one I saw in the vision. Then, a bizarre commercial showing kids wearing glasses that reprogrammed emotions with AI. It was all real, and the worst, people were excited therefore. I started writing everything down, page by page, as if it were a prophetic diary. One morning, while I was finishing a drawing of what I had seen inside the tower, the light bulb in my room exploded. My cell phone turned on by itself. The screen flashed, and in red letters it said, "You should have stayed." It was him, the deceiver. And now, he knew I remembered everything. After that night, everything changed. People around me started acting strange. Nothing blatant, but something in their eyes seemed off. My biology teacher, who used to be so funny, now spoke in a monotone voice and as if she were reading from a script. My friends stopped making jokes. All they talked about was technology, upgrades, productivity. It was as if someone had turned down the volume of everyone's soul. At school, they started offering a new assisted mental focus program. They said it would involve wristbands that synced your heart rate with guided meditation apps. But I knew better. The design was almost identical to the one I'd seen in the tower. The difference was that they were now using a different name, MindLight. Basically, it was all part of the same network, the same system, the same plan. And then I had another encounter. I was home alone, in my room, praying. For the first time since I got back, I said out loud, "Jesus, if you are still with me, if all that was real, show me what I should do." At once, the room became cold, the air trembled, and a voice, not like the one before, but loud, clear, like thunder between clouds, spoke, "You will be a voice among the deaf, and eyes among the blind." Then I was transported, without leaving my seat, as if my mind was being pulled out by an invisible thread. I was back on the battlefield I had seen in the tower, but now on the opposite side, I saw the two armies. One, made up of humans with glowing eyes, connected to each other, acting in perfect synchrony, as one organism. The other was small, ordinary people, dirty, tired, but each held a sword made of liquid light, and their eyes burned with the same fire I saw in Jesus. "They are the remnant," said the voice, "and you will lead them." But how? I was just a teenager, with traumas, doubts, fear. "You will be heard, not because you are strong, but because you are true, and because there are others, Lucas, young people like you. They are already waking up." And then I saw flashes of faces, boys and girls in different countries, some praying in basements, others writing coded messages on online forums, all with the same gleam in their eyes. It was a hidden army, not of weapons, but of revelation. I came back to my body with tears on my face. I knew what I needed to do. I needed to speak, write, record, even if no one believed me, even if they called me crazy. That same night, I created a channel, name, The Open Eye. In the first video, I just said, "They are not what they seem, and if you think that's okay, maybe you're already under their control." The next day, my video was taken down for violating community guidelines. I received anonymous emails threatening me, but what scared me the most was a direct message, with no sender, that simply said, "You should have taken the deal." After that message, I started seeing signs everywhere. Lights flickering in my room at 3 a.m., distorted sounds coming from my computer even when it was turned off. My videos were being deleted seconds after they were posted. But what scared me the most was what happened a week later. I received a letter in the mail, plain paper, white envelope, but no return address. Inside, a single handwritten sentence, "You've been noticed. We're willing to talk." On the back of the sheet, an address and a time, curiosity and an inner calling mixed together. Against all common sense, I went. The place was a mirrored building in the city center, where a technology company had previously operated that had mysteriously gone bankrupt. It was now occupied by something called Prometheus Institute. There was no website, no records. I walked in. I was greeted by a woman in a gray blazer with a robotic expression. She led me upstairs where a single man was waiting for me, sitting in a room with panoramic windows and cold lighting. He looked normal, young, handsome, friendly, white dress shirt, but his eyes, they were the same ones I'd seen on the Deceiver. It wasn't the same face. It was the same essence. Lucas, you have attracted attention. We want to understand what you saw, what you believe. I remained silent. He continued, you are special, but you are fighting against an inevitable evolution, and that can be exhausting. He offered me a contract. Literally. He said I could have a voice, be heard. He said they would give me a platform, that I would have millions of followers, that my message would be heard by everyone, but with one small condition: don't talk about Jesus as a person, talk about him as an idea, a symbol of spiritual freedom, and speak well of our vision for the future. After all paths lead to the same light, don't they? It was at that moment that everything became clear. They didn't want to silence me. They wanted to absorb me, turning my true message into just another diluted product, accepted by the masses. They wanted me to sell the truth in exchange for acceptance. Why me? I asked. There are millions of people in the world. Precisely because of that, you are still credible. You have a sincere look, the look of those who still believe. People trust you, Lucas, and if they trust you, they will trust us. At that moment, I heard the voice of Jesus within me, like a strong whisper. Do not eat at the enemy's table. I stood up. I looked into the eyes of that man, or whatever he was, and said, you are not what you seem, and I am not yours. He just smiled. A cold smile, but one that didn't scare me anymore. Then it will be you against the system, he said, and the system does not forgive. I left there knowing that I had signed my sentence, but I also knew, with absolute certainty, that I was not alone. After that encounter, I could no longer ignore it. I had been marked. The next day, my school hosted an educational tour from a new government program on digital literacy and neurotechnological well-being. The logo, it was a fancy variation of the same symbol I'd seen in the visions, a circle with a spiral that looked like an eye. The instructors were friendly as hell, practiced smiles, soft voices, but their eyes, empty. They talked to students about neural transcendence, connection without emotional interference, and freedom from spiritual guilt. In short, a soulless future. Meanwhile, my internet presence was being wiped. My channel was being deleted. My email account started showing errors. Photos of me disappeared from old profiles. It was as if they were trying to erase me from the world's digital memory. But the more they tried to silence me, the more I saw the signs in the heavens. Literally. The next night, I went to the roof of my house. I just wanted to pray, in silence, away from screens. The sky was clear, until 3 lights appeared. They didn't look like airplanes or stars. They moved in impossible patterns, as if responding to a music only they could hear. And then, as if in answer, I heard voices, whispers in languages I never learned, but understood perfectly. They were prayers, coming from others like me, young people scattered around the world, crying out for direction, for discernment, for help. At that moment, I felt my chest burn with a supernatural force. My mouth opened and words began to come out on their own. I was praying in tongues. It was as if a spiritual code had been activated within me. And there, in the middle of the night, I heard his voice again. You are part of the invisible line, a living network, not digital. The enemy has the servers, but I have the hearts. I saw images appearing in the sky, not with my eyes, but with my spirit. Young people hidden in basements, in the middle of the woods, even in big cities, each one receiving instructions like me, not through Wi-Fi, but through a spiritual frequency that the system could not intercept. I began to understand that we were forming something bigger, a spiritual resistance encoded by heaven, and with that came the warning. They don't have to kill you physically, they just have to kill your influence, make your voice irrelevant, ridicule your faith, saturate the world with so many distractions that no one can hear my whisper anymore. The next day, a news story went viral. A famous digital influencer announced a partnership with the same neurochip company I had seen in the visions. Her video said, "Technology is the new temple, and everyone is welcome to climb the altar of evolution." Millions of likes, hearts, emojis. But I saw behind the glitter, the dark eyes, They weren't them anymore, and they knew that I knew. A few days after the revelation in the heavens, I was contacted unexpectedly, by letter again. No sender, just one sentence written in a firm handwriting. You are not alone. Find the red door. That was all it said. No address, no clues, but something in me knew exactly where to go. The next day, I went to an abandoned industrial neighborhood on the outskirts of Austin. There, among the rusting warehouses, I saw that door, red, weathered, with the same spiral I'd seen in my dreams, but inverted. I touched the doorknob and heard a click. The door opened by itself. Inside, a dark room lit by candles. A group of people sat in a circle. Young people, teenagers like me, some older, but all with that awake look. They welcomed me without words, as if they had been waiting for me for years. It was the Circle of the Invisibles, a living network of young people who have also experienced NDEs, visions or dreams with the same theme, deception coming disguised as salvation. There, I realized that the movement had already begun. A boy named Elijah from New Mexico reported having an NDE after being hit by a car. He saw a fake version of Jesus trying to convince him to accept the gift of neural connection as a form of communion, but something was wrong. Jesus smiled too much and avoided saying God's name. A girl named Maya from California suffered respiratory arrest while drowning. She said she saw a council of light proposing spiritual evolution through technology, but as soon as she prayed the name of the real Jesus, the lights went out and monsters took shape. It was always the same pattern: offers of salvation without the cross, of power without renunciation, of eternity without repentance. The real Jesus appeared later, and in every case, he said the same thing: they are not what they seem. That night, we sat in silence and prayed. A powerful presence surrounded us, so powerful that one of the boys began to have a vision right there. He saw an entire city being covered in a web of digital light, and people walking into it like smiling zombies, dancing, laughing, and disappearing inside. But in the center of the city, there was an invisible tower made of prayers. Every time someone prayed for real, the tower grew taller. In the vision, the boy saw the faces of those who would keep this tower standing. One of them was mine. On the way out, they gave me a small wooden object with a verse engraved on it. John 10:4. The sheep know the voice of the shepherd and follow him. That was burned into my heart. I returned home with a holy weight on my shoulders. I was no ordinary boy, and the time for neutrality was over. Something so great was about to happen that only those with spiritual discernment would survive with their minds intact. That night I received a new vision, a giant screen, like a worldwide live broadcast. The new digital Messiah would be introduced, a hybrid being, part man, part machine. He would speak about peace, total connection, the end of wars, and the whole world would applaud. And then I heard Jesus' voice again. The countdown has begun. The morning after the vision, I woke up with my heart on alert, as if my body knew before my mind. Something was about to happen. I turned on the TV, and there it was, on every channel, website, notification, a single global ad. Today, the greatest innovation in the history of humanity will be revealed. Prepare to meet the first universal conscious. They didn't mention names like Elon Musk or Musk, but the images showed symbols of companies I recognized from the visions: Neurotech, MetaUnity, Synapse One, and in the center of the promotional image, a glass eye surrounded by circuitry, just like the one I saw in the futuristic tower of my NDE. The event would be broadcast live, simultaneously, on all platforms. Even schools and churches were being encouraged to watch. It was described as a moment of collective transcendence, and the slogan, "The new era does not wait." I spent the day with a lump in my throat. While everyone was excitedly talking about the future, I was watching a countdown to the greatest spiritual deception operation in history. Late in the afternoon, I went to my room, knelt down and shouted to the sky, "Jesus, what do I do? How can I fight something so giant against something that everyone wants?" The answer came unexpectedly, not in words, but in an image that appeared in the mirror in my room, my own reflection, but with eyes like flames, and an invisible hand wrote in the steam on the glass, "Tell the truth, even if no one listens." When the event began, the internet seemed to buzz. My phone was freezing from receiving too many notifications, Every social network displayed the same feed: get ready to receive. The city lights seemed brighter. Billboards flashed with words like neural freedom, you without limits, connect to who you were born to be. I sat down at my computer, opened my miraculously restored channel, perhaps by divine intervention, and went live. As the world watched the launch of the new digital messiah, I spoke to the few who were willing to listen. If you're watching this, you stop, turn off the TV, close your eyes, pray, because what's about to be presented is not a system, it's a being, and it wants access to your mind. I explained everything: my visions, the golden field, the encounter with Jesus, the deceiver in disguise, the mind control tower, and then I issued the warning. Today is not the beginning of a new era. It is the beginning of humanity's greatest spiritual test. They are not what they seem. But if you are connected to the true voice, you will recognize the deception and resist it. The live stream was taken down in less than 30 seconds, but not before thousands of young people had attended. I received prints, messages, people in tears, people saying that, upon hearing my voice, they remembered dreams they had forgotten, visions from childhood, warnings that the world had drowned out with entertainment. It was the beginning of the silent counteroffensive. Jesus had not left us alone. That night, as the world celebrated what they called the new birth of human consciousness, I stood silently in the dark, staring up at the sky. There was something different in the air, a heaviness, as if the entire planet had held its breath. The news kept coming, people reporting feelings of euphoria after initial contact, tears for no reason, thoughts shared between strangers. Everyone was celebrating the beginning of an era where minds would be unified. But what few noticed was that, along with this supposed connection, something had died: spiritual restlessness, the hunger for the invisible, the ability to discern. In the days that followed, those who refused to join were called backward, fanatical, and conspiracy theorists. Apps began automatically blocking any content with words like repentance, Jesus, heaven, or hell. The algorithm was programmed to silence the sacred, but we were ready. The circle of the unseen grew. Secret channels formed. Groups began to meet in forests, basements, abandoned garages, and each meeting was accompanied by miracles, healing, deliverance, prophecies, visions of heaven, things that not even the greatest AIs could reproduce. Jesus had promised us something, that where 2 or 3 were in his name, he would be there. And he was, not as a concept, but as fire. I discovered that other networks were emerging, in Brazil, in South Korea, in Nigeria, all with similar stories, all with young people saying the same words: they are not what they seem. And with that came the certainty. The war was now spiritual, invisible, but real as never before. Not against flesh and blood, but against ideas, against friendly smiles that hide poison, against innovations that promise life, but drain the soul. Today, I don't know how much time we have before things escalate. I don't know if I'll have access to the internet tomorrow, or if my voice will be permanently silenced. But I do know this: those who are connected to the sky, not the systems, will be guided. Those who hear the true voice will survive, and more, will shine. Because the deceiver's plan is to turn humanity into an empty echo, but Jesus' plan is to light a flame in the midst of darkness. And if you are watching this, and felt your heart burn, then know this: you too have been called. You were chosen too. You too are one of us. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.